All right, Storm Nation, welcome to 2024. We made it out of 2023. We're into 2024 in the first edition of Tech Talk. I'm Hank Boomershine, Vice President of Sales and R&D, with my esteemed group of people here with me and the masterminds behind the things that we do here at Storm Products. And I'm going to let them each introduce themselves, and then we'll jump into some tech and some talk.
I'm Alex Hoskins. I'm the Director of Research and Development. Do a lot of stuff with ball testing and obviously these new products.
I'm Chad McLean. I'm the Technical Director of Product Development, and Steve and I work closely to develop all the products alongside these guys in the lab. So lots of cohesion and synergy happening right here.
And I'm Steve Kloempken, and exactly what these guys said, product development, and there's a lot that goes into developing new products and new bowling balls and understanding the cores and cover stocks and how they perform on the lane and how they're different from each other is a key part. I think that's kind of why we're here, is to help you understand the ball motion, what the differences are in the new products, and how they fit in our product line.
Yeah, let's first jump in, and we're going to start first with Absolute Power. We're going to pop up the Waze video. Many of you see these Waze videos. They're great. Chad's a big coordinator in putting all these together, all those talent to get those balls to go down the lane, take those footages, and then share them with you, the public. And he does a lot of behind-the-scenes work to make these, come to light and be very professionally made. So let's watch a little bit of this one, and then we'll start talking a little bit more of the guts behind the Absolute Power.
Hi, my name is Cortez Shank. I'm the 2023 PBA National Tour Rookie of the Year. I just got done throwing the Absolute Power. Man, this is a lot of ball. I plan to use this when the Reality, Eternity Pie, and Gem are a little too early, but I still need something that's a little stronger. This will be a little cleaner through it and still retain a lot of energy and hook a lot.
Hey folks, Steve Kloempken here, and we are showing you the new Absolute Power. Now, the one cool thing you're really going to notice out of this ball is the shape that it makes down lane. A lot of times when we're looking at these big ASIM weight blocks, if we put a strong cover stock on it, sometimes it reads the mid lane nicely, but it loses a little bit of that entry angle or back end reaction. And this is a ball that created a ton of angle for us down lane and gave us a lot of versatility on the lane.
I would say that the closest comparison would be the virtual gravity, but it's not as aggressive as a virtual gravity. It does get down the lane simply. I don't have to overforce it to get down the lane, where the nano cover on the virtual gravity picked up so much sooner. I think that the Absolute Power is more, it's clean through the fronts, but like I said before, it's really nothing that I've seen in this line for a very, very long time. So it kind of stands out on its own.
Okay, there you got to see a couple of different players. You got to see one of the GOATs over here, the Hall of Famer, Steve, throw it down the lane, and you got to see my wife had a great year this last year, I'm sure, Lindsay. Just some really good feedback from all those players, and then Cortez Shank's the star of the future. So you had a veteran, a very highly regarded woman player, and then you got Cortez Shank, and then Steve, the legend over here. So yeah, well, let's talk a little bit first about some interior components and the mastermind behind the shape, and kind of the thought processes that go into that.
Yeah, so Sentinel Core, basically what we were kind of trying to do, or what I was doing when I was designing this, was taking pieces and components of some of our most successful core designs in history. We actually have a really cool YouTube video on this, kind of showing each of the different variables that we took into it. But basically, if you split it top to bottom, it's very evenly weighted from top to bottom, and there's more weight at both ends, and there's less weight in the middle. Now that gets a little bit unique, because usually when you have a little bit less weight in the middle, the RG value would go up a little bit. But if you look at the Sentinel Core, you're at 248, 050, and 021 in a 15-pound ball, which for having that weight and that torque effect further away from the center, that's why you see this ball get through the front of the lane a little bit cleaner and change direction quite a bit harder off the end of the pattern. Another unique thing is you have the concave parts by the y-axis, and that really helps with your thumb hole. A lot of those thumb holes end up somewhere close to 6 3/4 inches from the pin, and that basically just makes it so you're not removing as much of that heavy, dense weight block material that we worked really hard to kind of design and try and keep those numbers more intact across multiple drillings and for multiple different styles of player. So you kind of take a couple of good variables, put them together, and you can create something a little bit unique.
Chad, give us a little bit of the, we build those cores, we start to create that shape like Alex is talking about. You're creating something that's really torquey but still wants to be clean, and we're still trying to fit them in. And then the next step of the equation is, okay, what's the footprint we're going to create with the lane? I mean, we started with absolute, now we've gone to absolute power, but we've kind of kept a little bit of the same mentality of we know we want this ball to be a little cleaner, like the absolute. So where do we go from there?
When we sit in those meetings and I listen to you guys and we talk about it, we had a big meeting yesterday, right? We know these cores, like this one coming up, was going to be a torquey effect. So we wanted to marry that properly with the right cover stock. We didn't want too big of a cover stock.
Right.
Kind of have that in the gym. We got that in some other balls. We want something that's cleaner, gets through it a little bit easier. So R2S Deep was the way to go. And that was one, and we've all bowled in Japan.
Yep.
We all know it hooks in Japan.
Oh yeah.
So this was an exclusive cover overseas in Japan for a long time, and they liked it for that reason. It kind of did a good job of ignoring the first 20 or so feet. We tested it polished first. It's okay. It was almost too clean. Almost shot through it too easily. We tested 2,000, but ultimately landed up on 4,000. So it's a pretty good benchmark start as far as surface goes.
Yeah, and definitely gives us a different shape and motion when it comes to an asymmetric ball. I mean, as you saw in those videos and all those comments that were made by those players were all in that same thing, was they didn't feel like it's an asymmetric that wanted to get offline too fast. They felt like they could get it to shape more. And I think the beauty of this is, like with the Sentinel Core, is you get something that wants to be very torquey, and very much abrupt change of direction, can be abrupt change of direction. You be careful sometimes if you put too big a cover on it, then what do we create? We create something that wants to kind of maybe get a little forward, sometimes not give us as much entry angle as you talked about.
Lindsay touched on that, and I like to lump them into two major categories: nano-based and non-nano-based.
Correct.
We have blends in between and 50/50s, and we have our urethanes over here. This one is definitely not nano-based, so it's gonna stay online a lot easier, a lot longer than something that is nano-based.
Yeah, and one of her big benchmarks in big balls is Reality. That's the one that she's kind of her start go-to ball. And even yesterday, we were on the lanes yesterday and throwing another ball down the lane and doing some comparisons. And then that was a great step down was that absolute, and she could keep going left and keep getting it to shape. But she kept saying to me, "What makes this so special?" I said, "It's the magic of cover core combinations to get you the shape that you're looking for." And even when I did mine, I was usually on the left, and you get those balls, you always get a lot more friction down lane because you're less traffic, so they don't blend as much. So big ASIMs they want to get kind of chopped up and go forward a little bit. So then you're trying to cheat your layouts to make them keep shaping. This one, I tell you what, it just kept going. I was like,
staying a lot longer too.
I was like, man, I'm just going to be a good one for me. So, but I think we segued a little bit out of that and started talking about ball motion and reaction. Steve, your thoughts, because you get to watch. I mean, you and I have been all over the world, and like they reference with Japan and the frictions in the front. There's still a ton of wood there. I mean, even the biggest bowling center, there's still wood, and those types of things. We felt we needed, and when we look at our lines and performances, I mean, this is something we felt we needed.
Yeah, I think one of the main things when you're trying to match up to a condition is just kind of understanding the shape that's needed on the lane. And I have a lot of use, and I think all of us do here, for some of these bigger, earlier rolling asymmetrical balls. I mean, when the lanes have a lot of oil in the front and the backs are very clean, especially if you're playing a little bit closer to the track and maybe even sometimes a little bit to the right of that, you need a ball that has the ability to stand up and not just go so far down the lane that it goes through the pattern and then makes too abrupt to change the direction down lane. So those balls are very helpful and useful, whether it's the original DNA or a gem or, Reality, whatever we're talking about in that kind of area, like what Cortez mentioned in the video. But when you start to move inside, I mean, Cortez or somebody like that with that kind of a rev rate or axis rotation, might be able to see some back end reaction and change the direction out of a bigger ASIM that has a stronger cover stock. But me personally, and you can see it in the videos, and I saw it a lot when we went and we were just in Korea for the Storm Cup. We saw a lot of times, and the Absolute Power was a great ball there, produced a great ball motion because it was a 43-foot pattern that didn't allow you to play too far to the right. So you had to start a little bit more inside anyways. And as you start to move inside, that's when you need a little bit later break point, and that's what the R2S deep solid cover gives you in this. So it's a strong core, but the cover on it isn't so early rolling that you use all the energy up in the front part of the lane or in the mid lane. So it gives you a little bit more change of direction down lane. So Darren Tang, Chris Vi shot 300 with it right next to me in Korea, throwing the Absolute Power. And he was playing, as you would imagine, probably around 5th, 25, 26 or so at the arrows, able to move in and get the ball to shape down lane still and go through the pins the right way, whereas a stronger covered ASIM probably would be a little bit smoother down lane.
And that's where you get a lot of those guys as the rev rates go up. Chad being one of those big 500 RPM guys.
Would be 600 if you put grips in it. But
I wouldn't wait for grips. Anyway, even the 500 RPM guys and those guys, usually a lot of times the big ASIM balls, I mean, you kind of shy away from them a little bit because they do want to spin around to their PSA a little quicker. They do want to kind of get online, and then once that axis passes that point, it kind of just want to go a little tumbly. And this one, because of the design and the concept behind the design, and where you create those, and we've talked about in that YouTube video, I urge you to go look at those. Is you get those cuts and planes at like 45-degree angles to that, the x-axis and the y-axis and the z, and there are all these little cuts and planes that it kind of always feels like that ball is in motion, and that goes back to a few other weight blocks that have passed when we did that as well too. So, Alex, you want to kind of share a little bit more of that?
Yeah, I guess.
Put him on the spot. Sorry, folks.
My favorite thing on the spot. Yeah,
Hold on. He's got his notes here because he's always on the. You
got to be prepared.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So either way, one of the obviously biggest design features of that was based off the nucleus, which was one that you kind of drew up, a while ago, and it does come back to that sort of almost perpetual-ish motion of it.
Correct.
But I think what really makes this Absolute Power so good, it kind of gets back to what you talked about, Steve. As we get stronger covers, we have the bigger balls that, they see the lane. There's a lot of volume on the lane. Sometimes as the rev rate gets too high, you get forced a little bit further left, and then the ball doesn't want to corner. This one kind of gives you the best of both worlds because of that marriage of the cover stock and the weight block. You still get that to keep going while the cover stock isn't making the ball see the lane as soon as it touches basically as soon as it touches the lane. So straighter players can play a little bit straighter with it. You can also get a little bit further left and feel like you can still get it to come around the corner.
Yeah, you don't see that too often with the ASIM solid.
That's really what separates, in my mind, a really, really good versatile ASIM versus kind of a more niche, thresh type ball.
And I think Lindsay kind of brought it up when she started talking about virtual gravity nano. That's another smaller core that likes to spin a little faster, that even when it kind of gets lined up, it's still shaped. If you remember virtual gravity, the original, and everybody was like, man, I can't believe that this ball is this strong, but yet even when I move left, it still keeps going. So that kind of feel of that way back to that, that shape lock, and trying to do that
solid that created some back end.
Yeah. That was the big thing. Everybody's like, man, even when that ball gets a little bit of lane shine, boy, that thing still hooks a ton. Kind of thing. Yeah. So Blair, we got a little kind of questions from the field.
We do. The first one is actually a terminology question. So does getting too forward mean that it's losing energy and rolling out?
It's a good question.
You want to answer that one?
It's just so hard to kind of give a straight answer. Basically, as the ball flares, it's kind of migrating along its axis. It's trying to find this final position that it's going to want to kind of get into a roll where it's end over end. The faster that happens, the more that happens in the front part of the lane, the less there is that can happen down lane. So if we get something like a stronger cover that causes the ball to get forward a little bit faster, or a stronger core, that is going to happen quicker front to back. And we always talk about front to back, not left to right, because the lane is so much longer front to back than it is left to right. So as the ball picks up earlier, gets going more forward, uses more, we like to say uses more energy in the front part of the lane, it'll have less energy down lane to be able to continue going through the pins.
There's lots of reasons why that could happen.
Sure,
Surface,
layouts,
how they throw it,
Lane
surface,
axis rotation.
That's what I was gonna. I think
Yeah,
it was a
too
good
many
point to
variables.
kind of clarify on that, which is, we're talking about what happens to a ball as it goes down the lane, which is the fact that everybody releases the ball with some amount of axis tilt and axis rotation, right?
Mhm.
And generally, you're going to have more axis rotation than tilt. So your PAP is going to be pointed back towards you, and it's going to be tilted up a little bit from the ground. But as the ball goes down the lane, it's going to lose both of those.
Correct.
So as the ball rolls more forward, it's losing the tilt
It's
and
losing
rotation,
its tilt and rotation.
which, based off the amount of friction between the ball and the lane, can happen sooner. Could be because of the friction of the surface of the ball, the surface of the lane, the type of the lane oil,
layout.
the layout, and your RPMs, and
Goes
a lot of
on.
different factors. Yeah, exactly.
And that's why it's a loaded question. There's
Yeah.
a lot to it. It's opening up a menagerie of different things that are part of the equation.
The important thing is to recognize when it happens and what to do when it does happen.
And I think the biggest thing too is trying to see the lane more front to back as well, as opposed to left to right.
100%.
And we see the difference, not to go on too long about it, but we see the differences even within the same bowling center,
Oh yeah.
right? I mean, we all know, and we've been in these centers, where if you bowl in the lanes that are closest to the control counter or the front desk, there's more friction that's built into the surface on those particular lanes. And you'll see the balls transition in a different way than it does if you bowl down in the ends.
100%.
Yeah, and that question was from Dave, but our friend Mike Sinek, he pointed out when you guys were talking about the lane surfaces that a lot of the centers in the U.S. have lanes that are 20 plus years old. As it
Yeah.
is too.
And the thing about like these we talked about with Japan and a lot of still wood and a lot of high friction surfaces. There's as Mike Sinek pointed out, you've got a lot of centers that had put synthetics or had changed the surface, but it's been over 20 years since they did it.
That's right.
We bowl at Ben Lomond in Ogden, Utah on Monday nights, and what we had 10 years ago, what we have now, if you put a pattern out that's 43 feet, it looks like 41 feet because the surface just has more hook to it. So there was a lot more, and feedback we were getting from the field and salesmen and pro shops was, we'd like to see some bigger ASIMs that we can use a little bit more on some house patterns and in some situations, because there's a lot more friction than there ever has been across this country as well too. So Mike, great point.
And we have a question from Victor Quintero, whose son Mateo bowls pretty high level. He wants to know recommendations for two-handed bowlers with this absolute power.
Yeah, so you're pretty much, I mean, it's a lot more flexible, mainly because of the asymmetry. We've kind of been preaching with 2LS. You want to increase that final number, that pin to center grip distance, to at least over 2, 3, 3.5 on symmetrical balls. But for this, you can go really anywhere from, I wouldn't go much lower than 2, but you could go from 2 to up to 6. Pin to PAP distances, generally two-handers have quite a bit of rev rate. Usually they're a little bit on the rev dominant side. So I like kind of staying between 5 and 5 3/4 inch pin to PAP distances. And then the nice thing about this is you have quite a bit of intermediate differential, some asymmetry built into that weight block already. So you want to take advantage of that. You want to put that somewhere between 3.5 and 4.5 to get it into an unstable position to where you're actually taking advantage of that design intent in that Sentinel weight block. So something like 5.5 by 4 by 3.5 is going to be a pretty good 2LS start point.
I think that was real similar to what Chris Vai had in the one he drilled in Korea.
He actually asked me to.
I was
Hey!
Chris probably reached out to.
We have 2 more good questions, and then we can move on. Well, we have a lot of good questions, but we'll answer 2 more. One from James. He wants to know, Open Championships obviously are coming up, and is this too much ball if you're heading to the USBCs this year?
It's hard to say. I mean, Open Championships, there's been years of balls that you've had to use the biggest balls you could think of, and there's been years of team event where you're using urethane. So the nice thing about this is, even though you get in those situations where you can only travel with so many balls.
Yeah.
If you're flying, that's the tricky part too. Is This one could kind of give you a little bit of both. It's still clean enough on the ASIM side, on the cover side, that it'll clear the fronts if you need something to be a little bit cleaner. But if you needed to, you can always adjust these surfaces. Just because it comes with a factory finish of a number doesn't mean the number has to stay. You can go down, up, and the best players in the world are famous for, it might be a ball at 4,000 and we're going to make it 500 because it'll just match up to that condition. So I wouldn't say you pigeonhole yourself that this won't work or will or won't work. The idea of an open championship is you bring an arsenal of balls that you know that work from top to bottom, from the shorter to the longer patterns, and every ball, just because it has one surface doesn't mean you can't make it 8 different reactions that you have for those performance balls and a spare ball.
We've recommended before, but go to the storm booth.
Yeah.
Go in there when you get to the Open Championships, ask them what's been working, what balls have been popular, because they see a variety of different styles. It's not just only, you know, this particular group of people or this type of people, or only two-handers or only one-handers, or what. They'll be able to guide you the right way for what's been working this year that they've seen, right? Because they don't release the oil patterns until the end of the tournament.
Right.
So everybody goes in blind, and you just have to kind of go in based off of, you know, some kind of information you get. In the storm booth is a great place to go to get some information as soon as you get to Vegas.
All right, so I think the last one, this comes up a lot. Steve is asking, is it important to drill a ball to match the design, i.e. solid cover pinned down?
What did I ask?
Another Steve. It's another Steve.
Good name though, right?
A great name. I love it. No, I love Steve too. Hi, Steve. I can answer that if you don't mind. So, you know, I do think one of the common mistakes that bowlers have made over the years, myself included, I think we all have learned over the years that, you know, if you have a bowling ball that's designed to hook a little bit less or give you more control, sometimes we get afraid that it's going to go too straight, so we drill it strong. And we have a ball that's designed with a real dynamic shape, and we're afraid it's going to hook too much, so we drill it weaker. And what happens if you drill your weak balls in a stronger layout and all of your strong balls in a weaker layout, you end up getting a lot of crisscross and mash, right? You just get a lot of mishmash. And so I really believe I'm a good advocate for let the balls do what they're designed to do, and you want to enhance what that design is. So if the ball's designed to shape the lane, use a layout that's going to flare. It's going to give you some performance on the lane. If the ball's designed to give you more control and make a straighter path to the pocket, use a more stable layout in general. And then you're going to have wider, especially if you're limited in your arsenal, like you mentioned, Hank. You know, you've got 6 balls you can bring or so. You're going to have some variety, you know, but if you go in there and you've got, you know, 6 balls that all do the same thing, you know, you're just either going to have 6 balls that are real good or 6 balls that are not going to roll good. Yeah.
So it's some decisions that you have to make because they're so close to each other.
That's right.
There's some special instances like the IQ 78. You don't want to drill it too strong.
Correct.
Because then it's too much of a good thing at that point.
And I was just going to say, we actually teach kind of an arsenal building thing at the Innovative School. And one of the things we do talk about is when you're, you know, if you only have 3 or 4 balls, you definitely want to drill them to their design intent to keep them more separate. Because as you're doing, let's say, a stronger ball weaker, you are pulling it closer to something else. Now, it doesn't mean that you necessarily shouldn't ever do that, because it can be good sometimes in certain situations, but it does get a little bit more niche when you do that, because you are trying to kind of pull it a little closer to something else that might be able to do it more efficiently.
And the big thing to always remember is, based on your, as we talked about earlier, your speed, rev rate, axis, rotation, and tilt, you find a sweet spot in your pin distances that you should be using. And that pretty much transcends across every bowling ball that you drill, that you're going to stay within a window of, like you just said, 5 to 5 3/4, what you'd say for a two-handed player. But a player that might be a little less rev rate, you're going to stay to 4.5 inches. And a ball that has 30 diff and a ball that has 50 diff at 4.5 inch PAP are definitely differences in shape. And the best players in the world are famous for using the same layout and having 4 balls with the same layout and all 4 balls, and they make the adjustments based off the performance of the bowling ball.
You have someone who was at the Innovative School with you, John Heck Jr. John Heck Jr.
Yep.
He said he learned a lot from Hank and Alex. So.
Those are nice 4 days of one-on-one. Chad's been there with us and helped teach the class last year. Yeah, there's a lot of information that goes out with those.
Cool. Go into the Summit Peak now.
So Summit Peak, let's go a little segue into some Waze videos on the Summit Peak, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it.
I was throwing the Summit Peak today. I was really excited about this bowling ball because it reminds me of the Virtual Energy color-wise, and performance-wise, it reminds me of a Marble Pearl. And the bonus of this bowling ball is that it has the new AI core technology. So if you love the Summit, I would suggest getting the Summit Peak, drilling it the same way, and you'll know exactly which ball to ball down to.
Summit Peak, wow. You know, I have to say, pretty bowling ball. Reminds me a little bit of Virtual Energy back in the day. The coolest thing about it is TX23 and this Pro Reactive is very responsive to the dry, like almost check markish, you know, that very defined break point. So you're looking for something to create some entry angle down lane, give you a cleaner look through the front, but still not miss it front to back. Summit Peak's gonna be the one to go to.
Hi, my name is Cortez Shank, 2023 National Tour PBA Rookie of the Year. I just got done throwing the Summit Peak. Man, this ball does not disappoint. Clean, angular, what more can you ask for from a symmetrical pearl? This ball reminds me a lot of a Marble Pearl on steroids thanks to that AI core, new technology. Can't wait to throw this one this year.
Wow. I think the big thing there is this is a pretty bowling ball. And I think we mentioned the old school original Virtual Energy, not the blackout Virtual Energy now. So, but Alex, talk a little bit about our second rendition into AI technology.
Yeah, so second AI core on Storm bowling ball. So Centripetal HD, that was one of our most, storied shapes, really good at a bunch of different densities. You go back to the regular IQ Marvels, you have IQ Tours. It just made sense to use this as kind of the first rendition of this new AI core technology. And we did have a YouTube video, a 3-part YouTube video, where we kind of talk about each one. My particular part was a lot of the testing of it, which was really interesting because we actually set up a ramp and we threw, I think it was 800 shots, in a couple of days. We were pretty tired having to put the ball up on the
I just rolled it on the gutter, see it.
Yeah, so, but after those 800 shots, we used a non-AI core and a regular AI core with the same shape in it of the same density. And we saw over a 3% increase in pin carry with that ramp being at different launch angles and entry angles. So it pretty much showed us that our thought process of creating this kind of webbed AI design and then being able to increase our density limits to use or to lower the RG and raise the diff in these shapes that were previously handcuffed. Once we got to a certain point in the manufacturing process, we're able to kind of unlock a little bit more hitting power and a little bit more pin carry. And like I said in the video, 3% may not sound like very much, but if you start bowling, over an entire season or over a decade, that's kind of a compounding growth type of thing. So you see really a lot of, or a lot higher scores over the long run from that.
Yeah, you even think about like a tournament, like a Masters tournament or something like that, just a long haul. Over all those matches, if you can gain those hits here and there, as you guys have both made Masters shows, actually both against each other. But anyway,
Pretty cool.
So the core we know had a lot of success in summits, and now the Summit Peak. So now we're on the second time of okay, let's match a core to a cover and make it fit in the line of all three of these brands that we produce here in Utah.
So this one's kind of cool in the fact that it complements the Absolute Power in a different way. So the Absolute Power is a textured asymmetric solid, and this one's a shiny symmetric pearl. So this kind of goes the other direction. Now you can put a pearl in anything and usually get a pretty good look because it shapes down, it does what it's supposed to do with the pins pretty well. But this one with the low RG, the really low RG in the AI core, it's going to rev up quick, but we spoke about it a little bit with the Absolute, or the question from the Absolute about balls getting forward too quickly. This one doesn't really want to do that either. It revs up, but it does stay on line. It maintains its axis rotation a lot longer because of the cleanliness of the cover. And then once it sees friction, Hank, you mentioned it, it unloads a pretty stiff punch when it sees it.
TX23, yeah.
It's an enhanced, it's an updated phase 2.
Right.
Phase 2 was TX16. So this is
Right.
the first time that we took a look at one of the most successful covers in TX16 and then kind of modernized it and put our spin of today on that kind of chemistry.
Sure.
So TX23 is pretty responsive to friction.
Oh yeah. Steve, you got to see it firsthand quite a bit.
I did. I actually used it myself there in Korea as well. And Darren Tang was, when I'm thinking about this ball and who I saw bowl well with it and kind of utilize it to its, the best of its kind of capabilities. Darren used it several times throughout the tournament, but on the TV show as well too, when they cut to the top 6. He was in the first match, the shootout match, which had 4, 5, and 6 in the winner advances, right?
Right.
And he was actually down about 40-some pins through 5 frames. And he had kind of tried to make a little better shot here, tried to do this or that. He actually grabbed his summit peak, moved his feet about 7 or 8 left or so, and just decided to get all after it, right?
Sure.
Threw it out just as far as he was kind of getting the ball before, but with a lot steeper angle through the fronts. And he goes 4-bagger, threw a great shot in the 9th and rang a 10, and then went double and 9 to force the other guy to get a mark, and he actually chopped for a tie. So they actually went to a roll-off, which he won. So it's like a super exciting finish. You can actually, I believe you can go back and watch it on YouTube on Ginseng's YouTube channel on Storm Roto Korea, if you want to look that up. But it was an option for him that when he wanted to, he felt like he knew he needed more shape down lane, and he wasn't going to get it out of the ball that he was using at the time. So he took a big step left his eyes, pretty much in the kind of the same place as far as break point goes, and just attacked it with a much steeper angle through the fronts. And the Summit Peak responded down lane, and that's kind of what I saw and what I've seen out of it when I've thrown it, but what I saw out of him and several other players there at the tournament in Korea were seeing the exact same thing, which was a lot of length and a lot of responsiveness and hook down lane. So a quicker, faster response bowling ball, one that you can cover some boards with, one when you're looking for, say the heads are kind of beat up or dry, or even if it's just on this particular condition, I need to get the ball down the lane and then I need to get it to respond.
Right.
That's what the Summit Peak's for.
Yeah, and I think there's still a lot of questions that started to come up, and the salesman being on the road and talking to shops, and there's a lot of comparisons of Sublime, Summit Peak, even back to a Journey.
Sure.
There's been a couple of those really good pearls. I mean, the Journey's a little higher RG, still quite a bit of diff, and a different cover combination. So the higher RG is going to want to float down the lane a little bit more, still be very responsive. To me, the Sublime's always, we've bumped it up. It's a little bit faster. It rounds it a little bit more, not quite as abrupt off the spot. Now the Summit Peak is the next complement to that, in that middle of that symmetrical shape, lower RGs, lots of differentials. Just trying to people say, well, they kind of seem like they overlap each other. They don't really overlap each other. They're very distinctly different. It was funny when Lindsay threw on the Summit Peak and she's like, this doesn't really anywhere near a Sublime, and this is like the Sublime to me is earlier, and the rolls are a little rounded, and the Summit Peak, this thing just it responds to the friction. So I know that question's asked a lot.
Yeah.
So I was trying to address that, but I know, Blair, we probably have a few questions.
Yeah, and I think the main one, which I think you guys have answered, is how does this compare to the original Summit? So you guys have covered that one. You guys dove into the AI core, which was a lot of the questions. There is one about how does the Summit Peak compare to the Zen Gold label?
Yeah.
So, and then, let's dive into that one, and then we'll go to a different.
Yeah, Zen. I actually use the Zen Gold label quite a bit. It's in my tournament bag a lot. So for me, the Zen Gold label is one that's going to be a longer, little bit cleaner shape. It doesn't read the mid lane quite as soon or quite as early as the Summit Peak does for me. So it's a good complement. Now, if I'm looking at building an arsenal, it's a limited arsenal. I probably wouldn't bring both of them because, if I'm looking at a low RG, higher differential, symmetrical, shiny, all this stuff that kind of does go in that category. But in terms of comparing just the two, if you're looking for something that is going to read the mid lane a little bit better, allow your feet to get a couple boards inside with the Summit Peak compared to the Zen Gold label, the Peak allows you to do that. So.
Yeah, and the other side of the equation too is if somebody's maybe a little slower speed, and the rev rate's a little higher, the gold label might be a little bit better choice, and vice versa.
That's true. Yeah.
Person with a little more speed and the rev rate's a little lower.
That's right.
The Summit Peak might be a little bit better look because the TX23 has a little bit bigger friction footprint.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of people just wanting to know how it compares to other balls. So
I figured.
we can't answer all of them.
Try and stump us. Come on.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there are some really good ones. Like, what do you guys recommend to replace an Optimus?
Wow.
Yeah.
Ooh.
All right, Optimus.
Wow.
Probably.
Look at that.
Phase 2s are still being made. It's a solid symmetric.
Optimus, the Pearl or the Solid?
It just says
Because
Optimus.
there's
Optimus is
two
just a
different.
solid.
Yeah, there's an Optimus Solid
Yeah.
and Optimus
Yeah.
Pearl.
Maybe
There's the red, white, blue that was Pete Weber's favorite,
Yeah.
and then there's
Then
the
there's
Solid
versions
was
of
with
Pearl.
that, like it was the
It was a
burgundy, yellow,
kind of a burgundy one.
yeah,
Yeah.
Less popular than the
little less
than the
popular.
Pearl.
Terry McKinney would like to know, and this one probably is another one that's a really popular release, but where does the Vivo fit into this group?
Good question.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I actually brought the Vivo with. I keep going back to Korea, but I actually brought, of my 6 balls I brought
Virtual
to Korea.
Energy Blackout, for those of you
The
who don't know what Vivo is.
virtual energy blackout was one of my 6 balls that I brought because I do use that a lot. I use it a lot at the
Yeah.
South Point,
Yep.
and it's been a good ball for me ever since it was introduced. Allows me to get in, but that one is cleaner. There's no doubt about it that it goes down the lane easier and cleaner and just kind of glides and floats down there. It's definitely a lot closer to the Summit Peak than it is to the Absolute Power. The Absolute Power, I can really count on it reading the mid lane a lot better, earlier, stronger. But asymmetry versus a symmetric, typically you're going to get a little bit quicker response time. It's going to, want to change direction a little bit faster because it's a stronger core. So you'll get that out of the core shape in the Vivo as compared with the Summit Peak. But it was, it was a good choice. It's a good choice for a lot of people as well too. So it would basically fit kind of right in between the two.
There have been several questions about overcoming carry down.
Okay.
So, and whether one of these balls
I
or
can
what
answer for
layout
Alex.
or-
Can I answer for Alex on this one? Overcoming carry down, duller ball, throw it slower.
Curve it more.
There you go.
Yeah. Give it enough time.
Well, the tricky part about carry down, and we all know this in bowling and watching bowling and repping and watching the best players in the world throw shots down the lane, is that when you get the group of players that are lined up, they're blowing a hole in that part of the lane. It's like looking at a motocross race. They're in a rut on that turn, and they're in the rut. You got to stay there, but the problem is the oil that they're picking up right there is getting into a spot just at the back of the pattern. So now it gets started, and they move a little bit left for the right-handers. I'm not even talking about left-handers. There's no carry down the way. So they make that little move left, and then they get it to the track, and it starts to hook, and then it catches that little strip down the lane, and then it kind of pushes. And then, okay, well, if I get it to the track earlier, it gets faster. So, Alex, what's your thought right there when that happens?
To me, there's no way to really avoid it, right? It's down
there.
the lane, it's there.
Yeah.
So you have to strategically get through the front of the lane to utilize that carry down to be helping you in the back part of the lane. So in general, that's going to be more hold for you. So what do I need to do through the front of the lane? Cleaner cover, weaker layout, less surface, more surface, to get into a spot that's actually at least helping me and not really hurting me as much as I'm kind of trying to navigate my way towards the pocket. Because, I mean, oil is oil. If it's down lane, you can't get your ball to hook if there's oil down lane. So,
and I think the big thing, too, is they're kind of wanting to know, well, what kind of layouts, because if I move left with the same ball, on the fresh, there's fresh. The back ends are clean, it's quick, it's good, but we're 8 frames into the first game and there's 20 people on my pair. I mean, it seems like 20, but there's 10 people on the pair. If they're throwing urethane, it seems like 20. So there's 10 people on the pair. If it's a 5-man league, you got a lot of balls going down the lane, a lot of oil. So it transitions really quickly. So we make that move left with a ball that was responsive down lane. And all of a sudden it gets a little bit too far, and what's it do when we know it gets behind the pocket, Alex? What's it do?
rings the 10.
Ring 10. Or blower 7s. So what's the move? What's the change? And you're, like Steve said, what are you going to do? You're going to ball up, aren't you?
Yeah, for me, I definitely can ball up. I can get left. The advantage for me is I have so much slower speed that, there's so much time for my ball to change direction down lane that it doesn't bother me too much. But if you are a little bit faster, generally you're going to have to kind of get more on top of it and try and find something that's going to get through the front of the lane a little bit cleaner while still, you know, maintaining the traction down lane. So that can be a little bit harder to do. It could be a little bit stronger layout depending on what ball that it's in. It could be a weaker cover stock ball with a stronger layout. And you can see how now we're starting to get into that niche category that we were just talking about.
Yeah.
So Steve, what do you do in those situations when you get like that? When you see the front start to go, you move a little bit left, it still doesn't quite want to shape.
Yeah.
What's the kind of go up two ball or go down two ball? Either is it staying right, or is it kind of cheat left and trying to?
It depends a little bit. It could be either or. But the one thing that I've found that is a surefire way to plummet down the leaderboard is to not do anything. So as soon as you
I'm
see
gonna
that,
camp out right here.
yeah, pretend it's not there. Let's go with
I'm
that.
a lone wolf.
No.
I'm just gonna.
Yeah. So, but Alex is 100% right. Which is the thing is, if you want to use that as hold, generally the heads for me are already starting to get a little chewed up. So if I just move a little bit right and don't change balls, then it's going to hook early, or it's going to force me to then try to over.
Correct.
Right. So I need to either ball down and go right and kind of soften the hand a little bit, or the opposite, which is probably what I have a tendency of doing a little bit more. And I think most people it works a little bit better, which is actually going to a stronger ball and moving left, but making sure that you don't keep your angles the same. You have to open up your angles a little bit more. And like you'd mentioned, you know, if you're moving parallel inside and you've got carry down to the right and you've got fresh back ends inside of you, what's going to happen? Now you're going to magnify your errors, and it's going to just look terrible. You're going to have, you're going to have Hank to the right of you, and then I'm going to have Hook right in front of me. So when I do that, it's important to make sure that, kind of like what I was saying before that Darren Tang did, try to make sure that break point's in the same place, or even a little bit to the right of that, and then create more angle through the front part of the lane. But in order to get the ball to hook back, I need to ball up.
Right.
When I do that.
And Chad, I know in bowling with you and watching you bowl out there on Monday nights and things like that, it's amazing to watch that. I think your struggle on the fresh is bigger because your ball responds so much down the lane but when it starts to blend in the carry down, you just all of a sudden it's like, I see the big jump left, I see you just throw it at the spot, and you can ball up.
I cheat. I have a two-hander that's left with me with urethane every week. And it actually helps. You're right. It creates hold.
It does. It creates a hole for
I
it.
learned a lot.
And there's a lot of people that complain about the urethanes and ruins it. No, and actually, actuality, it can give you a better look in the lane if you play it right.
I love it.
Yeah.
We have a question about the people that throw 14 pounds, which it's getting more and more. The Summit Peak Core is interesting, incredibly low RG.
And that's what, Alex, you can reference that a little bit with what we can do with densities and things.
Yeah, we kind of hit on that a little bit with those density limits. You have a certain size that you can make the bowling ball, right? There's a little bit of flexibility in there, but it's not like we can make it way smaller to make it way less.
We make them all the same size. Don't let him talk about this.
So yeah, when you get to 14, in order to keep, RG is basically how heavy centered something is. So in order to make something heavy center, it's got to be pretty heavy towards the center. Now, you have three different layers in the bowling ball. You have the weight block, you have that outer lightweight core material, and then you have the outer urethane material, polyurethane material. We can't really change the density of that outer layer very much. It's kind of set in stone based on additives and everything in it. But however, we can change the densities of the weight block and the core material. And utilizing that AI core technology allows us to make the weight block appear more heavy in the center compared to the other two components. So that actually allows us to lower the RG a little bit more than we would traditionally be able to without modifying that shape to maybe be smaller or a different density as well. So,
and the other part of that equation too is the ability of the weight block with the added slug at the bottom allows you manipulation of those two parts together. Where in the Sentinel Core and Absolute, you're kind of limited because you have no extra slug in it, so it's harder to manipulate sometimes as we get lower and higher, between a 15 to a 16 and a 15 to a 14. I think all of our design really develops and starts around a 15 pound because 80% of the balls we sell in performance balls are 15 pounds. And so when you're designing, you're trying to design them into the sweet spot and then make sure that we can do it both directions with that extra slug on there too, and then the AI technology allowing us to tweak the densities, I think that gives us that a little bit more freedom.
Yep, for sure.
100%.
Yeah, and I think the last question we should end on is everyone wants to know, A, when the AI core is coming to Rotogroup, and if the AI core is coming to more balls in 2024.
I guess I could answer that one. Yeah, AI Technologies is going to move into all 3 brands. You will see some from each brand this year. You're going to see AI start to perpetuate in itself and become a mainstay across all 3 brands, because we feel there's a lot of added benefits to AI technology. First and foremost, we know that we can give a little bit difference in performance and possibly striking a little bit more and a few better hits here and there. So let's share that across the brands. The secondary effect is, as Alex mentioned, is we have that ability to adjust densities a little bit easier and to create. You're going to see some new shapes in the future that are even more dynamic and more responsive because of this AI technology. So I don't see it going away.
That's one cool thing I was going to just mention real quick is in the design process, it really kind of changes the game, right? You have the fence that you can't hit beyond. Now that fence has been moved back a little bit. You have, maybe this design that we wanted to maybe try,
Yeah.
Oh, this would be so cool, but it's just, we can't quite manufacture it on a large scale. Yeah. This allows us a little bit more freedom in that design portion.
100%. Anything else you want to share and talk about? I think the big thing is we talked about we're going to give a ball away.
Yeah, one random viewer who commented. We're gonna go back through and
okay.
We're gonna pick.
And you're gonna put that on. Okay.
Yeah, we'll let him know after the show's done. So one random lucky person that's commented.
Anything else you guys want to share in relation to these 2 balls, or anything that you see moving forward in 2024 that we want to maybe share with them?
Well, I think first thing on this would be, I guess, street date even. Yeah. Maybe beyond these, when can they swing by their local Storm VIP Pro Shop and grab one? So,
You got 16th is releasing from distribution to ship out to distributors, and then the street date is January 19th. Mm. So both of these balls will be available to buy at your shop on that day on the 19th of January.
But they can pre-order now.
They can pre-order now, yeah. And there's a lot of shops that take these pre-orders, and I urge you, if you see something in here that really interests you and you want to get it, definitely be able to pick it up on that date. Because I know the distributors will start shipping to pro shops on the 16th, so even if they're in the local area, they can get the ball the same day and start preparing and drilling bowling balls and getting them ready so that you can walk out the door and start running down the lanes with these 2 additions.
And it is, and I'll kind of close just for myself here. It's an exciting time of the year for competitive bowling, right? I mean, this is not only do we have these 2 new balls, the PBA Tour is starting up next week in Wichita. Yeah. U.S. Open's coming up a couple weeks after that.
RPI is going on right now.
The RPI is going on right now. The Team USA Team Trials is going on right now. There's a lot of great stuff happening. The Open Championship starts. We've got the Masters is going back to Las Vegas and the Suncoast in March. So it's a great time of the year for tournament bowling, and it's a great time to assess your arsenal and kind of see where you're at and see where you have some holes or some gaps. And you can either see your local Storm VIP Pro Shop, or you can call us here at
Ken.
Storm. You can call Ken.
Ask for Ken.
Email tech@stormbowling.com, or you can call him here right in the office.
You can reach out to Alex. You can reach out to Andy.
Yeah.
We'll try to help.
And be happy to help you. But that's now's the time to do so, because there is a lot of stuff happening this first quarter for sure.
Chad?
I like what he said. Yeah, if you have any questions, give us a shout. I'd love to talk to you.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah, now, competitive bowling right now is the time. We're gearing up here for Utah Open and all of our kind of regional tournaments and stuff too. And I can tell you, these 2 are going to be in the bag.
Yeah.
And then closing out, I think the thing I like to close out with is the big thing you've seen over the last probably 18 months. We went through some changes in Utah, and we've made some incredible strides and bounds in technology and things that we're bringing to the table. And there's a lot of great technology that's out there right now. I don't want it to get lost. And a lot of great units of different SKUs that are great bowling balls. And now we're adding greater and greater tools to the bag. And this is a great opportunity to, like these guys say, assess your arsenals, but also too is knowing that you're going to, throughout 2024 and moving forward, we're going to keep pushing the envelope of technology. We're going to keep pushing it. I mean, the tests that we've been doing and the shapes and things that we've been building and creating is exciting. I mean, I've been here a long time. Steve and I've been here in the 20+ year ranges for both of us, and I don't think I've ever seen a more exciting time in R&D and technology than I have right now. And this things that we've added in this AI and things that we're working on, it's just, there's a lot of great things even to come. And these are, you know, just more and more tools in the toolbox. As a player, we talk about the toolbox, and this is each tool that's designed a specific way to fit in a spot and to match up conditions and people. And we add more tools to this so that it fits everybody. It's not a niche that goes just to one person. It fits a variety. And if this one doesn't fit with you, there's another one that's going to fit. There's a lot of tools out there for you. And I urge you to talk to your VIP pro shops. Talk to your, you know, there's a lot of storm staffers out there that are bowling on the lanes, and they love to chat about the equipment. They love to chat about what they see and what they have successes with. And don't be afraid to not reach out to those, because they're ambassadors of ours, and all the way up to the professional level. It's sometimes harder to get the ear of a professional, but many times they'll love to tell you the story, and they'll love to tell you a little bit more about what they see successes in. So there's a lot coming in 2024. We look forward to doing a couple more of these tech talks, and I think Storm Nation, we're out.